welcome back to Blown Sparkles. In this video, I'm going to attempt to defend this book called Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. It's my favorite book I've ever read, and it means a lot to me. I also believe it's one of, if not the most misunderstood books that I've come across. So before I even start, I just want to say that I'm not trying to offend anyone with this video. And if you're only here to argue, then you can quietly leave, like right now. This is just my opinion on the book. If you have a different opinion, then that's okay. Our views don't have to be the same. You can hate the book, I can like it, that's okay. Also, I need to issue a very lengthy list of content warnings for this video right now because this is quite a disturbing book. So, content warnings are childhood sex trafficking, child sexual assault, child abuse, extreme violence, forced abortion and sterilization, rape, religious trauma, self-harm, suicide, incest, brief mention of slavery, and pedophilia. Not all of those will be talked about in the video, but those are all of the content warnings for the specific book in question. So, if any of those topics are not something you feel confident hearing about today, then please protect yourself and don't watch this video or read this book. Yeah. Redeeming Love is based on the book of Hosea in the Christian Bible. Basically, God tells this prophet named Hosea to go marry this sex worker named Gomer. So he does, but she keeps running away and going back to prostitution. And God tells Hosea to take her back, and so he does. And the point of the story is to metaphorically show how we constantly run away from God out of fear because we don't understand him, and he takes us back each time and forgives us because he loves us. So it's a metaphor, right? The two main characters are Michael Hosea, who is based on the prophet Hosea from the story, and Sarah, who is based on a sex worker named Gomer. Michael is a Christian farmer who owns a little cabin in the woods, and he also works on a farm there. Sarah, the other character, is a sex worker. She works in this brothel called Paradise. It's located in Southern California, and this whole story takes place during the gold rush. So Sarah is like the most wanted sex worker at the brothel. She's the one that like all of the men regularly go to more than the others. So she's the one that's constantly working. So in the prologue of this book, it tells us that Sarah was sex trafficked as a young child after her mother died and she had nowhere to go. Her mother, by the way, was also a sex worker. Sarah witnesses the murder of her abusive father by the man who trafficked her, and the man who trafficked her turns out to be a pedophile. His name is Duke. Duke then renames Sarah Angel and rapes her for a few years before she ends up at this other brothel after running away from him. The story begins when Michael goes into town to sell some vegetables that he grew on his farm. He sees Angel walk by and thinks she's beautiful, and then he hears from God, and God tells him to marry her. Michael finds out that Angel is a sex worker, and he wants to help her escape that, obviously. So he goes to see her at the brothel. So basically, the only way that he can do that is that he has to pay the Duchess, who owns the brothel, to see Angel. A lot of people have a problem with the fact that Michael paid money to see Angel in this scene. But, like, honestly, what else was he supposed to do? Like, there was no other way that he could have possibly have met her in this scene, so he was doing the best he could, to be honest. Michael asks Angel to marry him. She says no because she's afraid of pretty much all men due to the fact that she's a sex trafficking victim, obviously a child sex trafficking victim. But Michael continues to ask her to marry him. He keeps coming back. And people have a big issue with this because they think that Michael should just leave Angel alone should she keep saying no. But I want you to really think about like what's happening in these scenes. Michael is trying to rescue Angel from a place where she essentially gets raped pretty much every single day. And yeah, I know a lot of people don't consider sex work to be rape. And I will admit that sometimes like it very well might not be. But overall, like, and this is just my opinion, like, overall I think like it is. And if you don't want to watch any further, you can click off now, but like honestly I feel like it is, and I have an explanation. So I feel like it's inherently like against the laws of consent, and I'm going to explain that. So I believe that the only acceptable form of consent is when both your mind and your body are enthusiastic about performing said sexual act. So you're also going to say like yes, probably more than once, very enthusiastically. And you should really only have sex because you want to and because like you love the person that you're going to have sex with. And if you're only having sex with someone in order to get money to feed yourself, it definitely doesn't fit the above law of consent that I just listed. You're doing it because you need money to buy food so you won't starve. So you're basically doing it to survive. And if that's why you're having sex with someone, I would say it falls under the definition of rape because it's a survival tactic, and the other person is taking advantage of you and saying basically like, oh, I am your only way that you can survive, and you can survive but only if you give me sex. So it's kind of rapey in my opinion. So let's think about this kind of from a different perspective. If there was another way for women or sex workers to get money and make a living for themselves, I'm pretty sure like almost all of them would do it. Like if you offered that to them, like how many sex workers have you seen being enthusiastic about giving complete strangers sex? I bet not very many, if any at all. Therefore, they're not doing this because they want to. They're doing this because they feel they need to in order to survive. That's a big difference, and that makes it rape. So, yes, in my opinion, sex work is rape, at least most of the time. I know there's different laws about consent in the sex work industry, but that is just my opinion overall on that. So, back to the plot of the book. Michael is just trying to take Angel away from that, and that is not abuse or stalking. He's protecting her. He's trying to help her get out of this abusive situation. Angel keeps saying no because she has learned to fear all men, because the only men that she has been around have either been rapists, murderers, or both. So Michael's just trying to help her, and the fact that she is afraid of men is not Michael's fault because he hasn't done anything bad to her. So eventually, Angel goes to the Duchess, and she's like, hey, I've been working really hard. You owe me money that I've earned from doing all of the sex work. And Duchess says, no, I'm a jerk, so I'm not going to give it to you. And then the Duchess sends one of the other men that work at the brothel to kind of beat Angel up almost to the point of death. So she like gets a fever, and she's like pretty much she's on the brink of death basically. And so God then tells Michael to come back to the brothel because something is very wrong with Angel. And so he comes just in time, and then he decides that he's going to marry her right on the spot to get her out of the brothel. So he brings a preacher in and basically marries her. And this is a scene that people have a big problem with, since Angel is pretty much half conscious when she gets married to Michael, like unofficially, but technically they get married in this scene. She also doesn't say yes, she says why not. And people saying like, oh, well, she didn't give consent, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm contradicting myself, but there is something in the medical field where when patients aren't fully conscious or aren't conscious at all to give consent to receive medical care that they're in like desperate need of, and that they need like immediately, or else there will be like dire consequences. The doctors and or nurses will like assume consent for the patient themselves, and then give them medical care themselves. And that system has saved countless lives, because without that, people would have just died. So it's pretty much either assume that the person doesn't want to die, or let them die. So I think one is clearly the more preferable option. So that's exactly what's being done with Angel in this scene. She's about to die and she needs to get somewhere safe immediately. So Michael assumes that she doesn't want to die, and kind of assumes that she gives him her consent and marries her to get her out of there. So of course they're not like in love at this point, right? That's not what the book's trying to say. So he gives her medicine, takes her back to his log cabin, and I really want to make this clear that she would have died in this scene if it weren't for him. So don't forget that, please. So she wakes up the next morning and Michael's taking care of her. Once she fully recovers, she thinks that she owes Michael sex because he saved her life, because that's what all of the other men have treated her like in her life. Michael says that she doesn't owe him anything, and Angel's confused by this since she pretty much has never been given any autonomy before. So she keeps on offering and offering, like, you can have sex with me if you want. And he's like, no, you don't want to have sex with me, you don't know me, so we're not going to do that. And so then Angel gets pretty much fully healed, and she wants to get her money that she deserves and earned from the Duchess. So she runs away back to the brothel, and Michael comes and gets her back. Now before you say that Angel ran away from him, so clearly he should leave her alone, let me remind you that this is the same place that nearly killed her a few chapters ago. So Michael is saving her life once again. Angel isn't being very, I don't want to say she's not being very smart in this situation, but she's not making the best choice, let's be honest. But she's running away out of fear because she thinks Michael is going to hurt her. So, anyway, Michael brings her back to the cabin and teaches her how to fish, sew, and other things that she never knew how to do before. Angel is really excited to learn these things, and she actually has fun for like the first time, probably like in her life, so that's pretty cool. They start to become friends. Angel has continued nightmares of being raped by Duke and other men. She has a lot of trauma. Michael tries to comfort her. Angel really doesn't let him. He takes her outside to see the sunrise. Angel's really scared because she thinks he's gonna hurt her as they're walking in the dark. He doesn't, and he's like, calm down, I'm not gonna hurt you. So he takes her to see the sunrise, and he says, like, this is the life I'm offering you, Angel, a happy and loving life. So then Angel's walls kind of finally start to come down a little bit, and she says, Michael, you know, like, why haven't you had sex with me yet? I thought, you know, like, I'm your wife. And she believes that Michael thinks that she's like dirty and like disgusting because she was a sex worker. And Michael's like, oh no, that's not what I think at all. And he wasn't having sex with her because he didn't want to rape her, and he didn't want to further traumatize her. He wanted her to trust him. So now that he can see that she wants to have sex with him, he kisses her, takes her back to his cabin, and actually has sex with her. So Angel starts going into autopilot mode because she just thinks sex is about pleasing men. And so Michael like stops and he's like, pause, and he says that like it's not going to be the way that you know. It's going to be something different than that. And Angel doesn't know what that means, and so she gets scared of him. and Michael starts to cry because he doesn't want her to be scared of him. And then Angel's like noticing that Michael is crying because of her and is like brought to tears because no one has ever cared about her at all, like not even her mother. Her mother's kind of neglectful in the book, so no one has really loved her ever, and so she starts crying too because no one has ever loved her before. And this is the moment when Angel first starts to fall in love with Michael, and then they go to sleep in each other's arms, and Angel feels like real like love for the first time. So another thing I want to point out before we go any further is that we're in Angel's head for most of the book, and Angel is very traumatized. So when you read passages from the book that seem like problematic or something, that's how Angel views the situation, and Angel is a very traumatized child sex trafficking victim. So how she sees the world might not always be accurate to what's happening. And it's definitely not a reflection of how the author sees the world or the situation or topics in general. Angel is just a fictional character. Angel is not the actual author, so please keep that in mind. So Michael has a brother-in-law named Paul who is just returning home from the gold rush. Michael introduces them, and Paul's like, oh, I know you, you're a sex worker at that brothel. And so he immediately hoots her because he thinks that she like swindled Michael into marrying her. So then Michael goes into town to sell more vegetables, and Angel leaves again with Paul. She asks Paul to drive her to town in his wagon because she's scared of the fact that she's falling in love with Michael. And so Paul agrees, but then demands sex from her because he is not a good guy at this point. So Angel is scared of him and obviously doesn't want to have sex with him because she's in love with Michael, but she feels she has no other choice, so she does have sex with him. So Paul rapes her in this scene, and then she finds that the palace at the brothel is burned down. She finds that the palace at the brothel is burned down, but the brothel is still there. Also, I want to point out that she vomits after she has sex with Paul, or after Paul rapes her, because she can finally see the difference between like consensual loving sex and rape. So that's something that I wanted to point out. So Angel gets another job at the brothel. Michael finds out what happened. He comes and rescues Angel again. Angel then opens up about her past, how she was sex trafficked as a young child. Michael is like, it's not your fault, I still want you to be my wife, and this and that. So then Michael takes her into town a few months later as they're growing closer. He buys her dresses, and on the way back to his cabin from town, they come across this broken down wagon that has the Altman family in it, and Michael sees that they are in trouble and says that they can come stay in his cabin. And during this time, Michael and Angel sleep in the barn, and they continue to have sex a few more times. Angel actually gets turned on for the first time during one of their sex sessions, and she has never experienced that before, so she actually starts to enjoy sex for the first time, so that's something of note, which is pretty cool. The oldest daughter of the Altman family is named Miriam. Her and Angel become best friends. Paul and Miriam start to fall in love, but Angel thinks that Miriam and Michael are in love, and so she wants to leave again. And I know a lot of people think that Paul and Miriam being in love is pedophilia because of the age gap, but actually, in the time of the gold rush, Miriam would be considered to be an adult, so it wouldn't be pedophilia in this time. So so you don't really have to worry about that. Now it would be, definitely, but at the time it was fine, so don't worry about that. Because you have to remember, things were different back then. I'm not saying it's not weird now, but back in the day it was fine. So Angel is definitely in love with Michael now, but she thinks like, oh, I think Miriam and Michael are in love. So she runs away again, and God's like, don't stop her, she needs to make her own choices. So she gets a job as a waitress at a restaurant, and life is great. She earns her money for earns her own money for the first time. But then Duke comes back, finds Angel, burns down the restaurant, and sells her back into sex work, basically. So Angel is supposed to sing on the stage for all these men, but instead of doing that, she exposes Duke on stage for being a pedophile, and with the help of a pastor who happened to be in the audience, she escapes with the girls that Duke was holding hostage. So then Angel starts going to church, she becomes Christian, she starts a women's shelter for sex trafficking victims, and then Paul and Miriam are married at this point. Paul comes back to see Angel at the shelter, and he says, he talks about how his sister Tess died, and then he kind of completely lost the person he used to be. He used to be like a really good person, and then his sister died, and he kind of became like a total asshole. So unfortunately, he did do some really bad stuff, like rape Angel in the book, but he like completely breaks down and like apologizes, and like, it's hard to describe, but you should really read the book or watch the movie. But it was basically Angel that made him realize like, oh, like, wow, what have I become? Like, what kind of person am I becoming? And then he kind of changed his ways and became a better person because of her. And so Angel forgives him, and they kind of become like not really enemies anymore. So Paul was like, Michael's still waiting for you, you should come back to the cabin. And Angel was like, okay, I'm gonna come back, I'm in love with Michael. So she comes back and she tells Michael that her real name is Sarah, and they kiss and get married for real this time. And then Angel actually, blessed by God, miracle, she has 2 kids, which is a miracle because Michael had wanted kids and previously, and Angel had said, I can't have kids because I was forced to have an abortion and a sterilization during my sex working life because I kept getting pregnant, and I was told I couldn't have kids again, but of course she has 2 kids. So they have a happy marriage, and yeah, that is the end of the book. So that is the real story of Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. Like I said, I think it's very misunderstood. I hope this video helped combat that. I hope no one's mad, because this is just my opinion on the book. Our reviews don't have to be the same, like I said. And I just hope you enjoyed this video talking about this book, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.